You prayed the way they taught you, sat in silence, lit the candles, whispered the verses. But one day, none of it worked. The light didn't comfort. The silence didn't answer. The rituals you once clung to, they became empty motions. You bowed your head, but it didn't feel sacred anymore. Just hollow, rehearsed, like knocking on a door no one answered. You wondered if you were doing it wrong, if maybe your faith was too weak, if maybe the divine left because you failed the formula. Shame became your altar. You lit incense, journaled, pulled cards, saved your space. Still, the heaviness remained. You did everything right. So why did you feel so abandoned? No one warned you that healing wouldn't always feel healing. That sometimes the spiritual path feels like walking blindfolded through fog. And still you walked. You began questioning everything. Was it all just illusion? Was the voice of God just your own echo? Doubt wasn't a detour, it became the whole road. You watched others glow in their certainty. You envied their peace. But you were unraveling, not because you lacked belief, but because yours was shedding its skin. You began to resent the positivity, the endless mantras, the curated quotes. None of it reached the parts of you that were breaking. You needed realness, not rehearsed light. You used to find magic in the moon, in rituals, in energy. But then the magic stopped answering, and silence settled where wonder used to live. You felt betrayed by your own practices. They had once saved you. Now they abandoned you. And beneath the grief was a terrifying question: what now? You tried to force meaning, dug through books, courses, retreats, looking for the one sentence, the one prayer, the one ritual to fix what broke. But clarity doesn't come on command. You envied your past self, the one who felt divinely held, who trusted every feather, number, sign. Now you doubted it all. Was that guidance, or just hope wearing a mask? You whispered affirmations through tears, hoping they'd hold you, but they felt like lies. You needed permission to fall apart, not pressure to stay high vibe. You weren't broken. You were an initiation. But no one tells you that sacred transformation feels like holy destruction. It doesn't feel poetic when you're inside the fire. If your beliefs ever shattered beneath your grief, this story is yours. Share it. Whisper it. Let someone else know. Spiritual burnout doesn't make you less divine. You didn't lose faith. You lost a container too small to hold your pain. Your soul was outgrowing the scaffolding. And growing hurts. You learned that not all silence is sacred. Sometimes it's avoidance. And sometimes screaming into the void is more spiritual than pretending you're okay. The divine didn't leave you, but your image of it, that shattered. And maybe that's what needed to break, for you to meet the mystery, not the mask. You stopped pretending your pain had a purpose. You let it be what it was: hard, unjust, mysterious. Sometimes, the holiest thing is to stop explaining the ache. You learn to hold questions without needing answers, to walk with the divine, even in its silence. This wasn't abandonment, it was invitation, one that didn't come with words. You stopped performing for the divine. You stopped trying to be good, aligned, healed. You just were. And somehow that was enough. That was holy. You realized healing didn't need aesthetics. Your sacredness didn't depend on crystals or chance. It lived in your breath, in your body, in your ordinary life. You began to pray differently, not for answers, but for presence, not to escape, but to remember. Prayer became less about asking, more about being witnessed. You learned to sit in the not knowing, to stop trying to decode every sign, to let the mystery be mysterious. That too is sacred. The divine stopped being someone you chased. It became something you returned to, something that met you in dishwater hands, late-night tears, morning breath. You stopped treating spirituality like a job. No more perfect practices, No more gold stars. You realized devotion could look like resting, like crying, like letting yourself be messy and loved. You began noticing the small things. A breeze, a laugh, a moment of clarity. Maybe the divine wasn't hiding. Maybe you'd just been looking in the wrong direction. You rebuilt your connection slowly. Less lightning bolts, more quiet sparks. You no longer needed proof. You just needed peace. And peace, you discovered, was enough. You stopped searching for signs. You started becoming one. Your presence, your breath, your truth. That was the altar now. Have your beliefs ever unraveled and rebuilt themselves into something softer? Comment if your faith transformed in the dark. This space is for the seekers with cracked halos. You stopped trying to ascend. You chose to stay, to root, to be fully here, in the ache, in the ordinary, in the now. Enlightenment was never up there. It was always in your bones. You let your spirituality become smaller, quieter, less like fireworks, more like a candle that never burned out. That simplicity, it saved you. You stopped trying to be enlightened. You let yourself be tired, angry, honest, and in that radical honesty, you found something more sacred than pretending: truth. You realized the divine didn't need your perfection. It craved your presence, not your rituals, but your realness. That was the offering. That was the point. You gave up chasing signs and synchronicities. You started paying attention instead, to your gut, to your body, to your no. And for the first time, you trusted it. Your body became the sanctuary, not the enemy, not the project, the temple, the place where divinity whispered through hunger, fatigue, and touch. You let go of spiritual superiority. You stopped measuring how evolved you were. You realized real growth is invisible, quiet, unimpressive to the ego, but essential to the soul. You stopped outsourcing your intuition. You became your own oracle. Your body, your breath, your boundaries, they told you everything you needed to know. You found God in weird places, in dirty dishes, in traffic, in silence. The divine didn't need incense or chants. It just needed you to notice. Your practices didn't return. You did, not to doctrine, but to self, not to certainty, but to connection. And that was enough. You stopped waiting for divine timing. You made peace with this timing, the delayed, the messy, the real. You chose to believe your life wasn't late. It was right on time. You no longer chased transcendence. You leaned into embodiment. You didn't need to escape the world. You needed to return to it, softer and wiser. You saw others still rising, glowing, preaching, and you no longer felt behind. You realized everyone's path spirals differently, and yours was just as sacred. You stopped trying to heal constantly. Some days, you just lived, and living, without spiritual effort or agenda, felt like the most sacred thing you could do. You realized you never lost your connection. It just evolved. It no longer looked like rituals. It looked like kindness, stillness, saying no, saying yes. You stopped fearing doubt. You welcomed it. You let it teach you. And in that quiet surrender, you found the kind of faith that doesn't shout. It just stays. You no longer needed to prove your spiritual depth. You weren't here to impress the divine. You were here to be. And that somehow was devotion. You let yourself be both light and shadow, both teacher and mess, both sacred and silly. That duality, that's where your humanity found holiness. You stopped chasing awakenings. You let life be your teacher. The divine was no longer a mountaintop moment. It was the quiet nudge in your daily becoming. You didn't go back to who you were. You became someone new, not because you transcended the pain, but because you let it reshape you with grace. You no longer sought to be chosen by the divine. You remembered. You were already part of it. always had been. Nothing to earn, nothing to prove, just belonging. You understood now. The sacred isn't found in escape. It's built in dishes, deep breaths, text replies, boundaries, belly laughs. Earth isn't a detour, it's the temple. You stopped chasing peace. You became a place where peace could visit. Some days it stayed, some days it didn't. Either way, you stayed open. You now trust that even when the practices fail, you won't. Your soul remembers how to return, not because of a system, because of its nature. You stopped asking, "Am I doing this right?" You began asking, "Does this feel true?" And truth became your compass, not someone else's path. You embraced the spiral, the returns, the forgetting and remembering, the ebb and re-entry. You stopped needing a straight line. You let it all be sacred. You gave up waiting for a breakthrough. You chose to keep walking, with or without one. That quiet persistence, that's holy too. You now carry your sacredness inside you, not in books, not in crystals, not in chants, in you. That's where the mystery lives. That's where it always lived. You became your own sanctuary, not because you had it all figured out, but because you let yourself be a place where tenderness was allowed to stay. If this story mirrored your silent unraveling and quiet rebuilding, subscribe. Share it. Someone out there is still searching for permission to let go. Let them know it's okay to stop striving and just be.